preparing to let's see, go live. Okay. So I think we're good. I've muted the live stream, so I don't hear it. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. I think we're good. All right, we're going live. So if you're here, thank you for joining us. We have a fun topic today. We're going to talk about ADHD tax and what exactly that means. And it's an informal discussion. We're here just to like get your thoughts, share our thoughts, and talk about it. So with me today, I have Dejan. Information that he would like to share will be in the little description box afterwards. But we've been working together for a little while, and it's a topic that we have talked about before. And so I was like, great, do you mind coming on and joining me for this? Is there anything you want to share about yourself before we jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I've just noticed that really, I guess the thing that I noticed for myself in functioning in today's modern world was the ability to focus or the lack of the ability to focus. And this kind of led me to explore how is that impacting all other aspects of functionality or aspects of life. Yeah, which led me to have a lot of conversations with Sean and work together. So here I am. Yeah.
Okay. So let's just, I'm going to kick us off with a few things because it's December. And for many people, that means like holiday shopping and all of the things. So let's talk a little bit about like, what is ADHD tax even? What does it mean? And for the purposes of like our discussion today, ADHD tax is an additional amount of money that is paid by someone who is either diagnosed with ADHD or has ADHD tendencies. So they end up paying more for certain things because their executive function, which is the part of their brain that handles like prioritizing and working memory, that's going to come up a lot, and deadlines, maybe doesn't work in the same exact way as a more neurotypical linear thinker. And so we're calling it ADHD tax, or the term is out there because it's literally like an additional cost that you carry for having a brain that works in a nonlinear fashion. And so to simplify it, in regards to like holiday sales and shopping, it might be just the like lack of awareness around the deadline that a coupon expires, right? So for someone with a more neurotypical brain, they might say, oh, I have this coupon for XYZ and I know it expires on this date. And they may like pop it in their calendar and they may also remember it and they will use the coupon and say, save $50 on said item. For someone who maybe has ADHD or ADHD tendencies, same coupon, they see it, they see the date. It's like, great, I can save $50 if I use it by this date. They might even go so far as to say, let me put it in my calendar so I don't forget. And then what can happen is like, you don't actually even remember to look at the calendar before the date. And so when you tend to remember happens to be maybe the day after the coupon expired, right? Not for any fault of their own. It's really just because there is this like less access to working memory. Like it is a trait of having an ADHD brain. All right, that's just to like drop us in, but tell me some of your thoughts when it comes to this ADHD tax. I know, yeah.
Yeah, everything you just said like really resonates. as I find myself navigating those situations, or just even thinking about like going forward, how will I navigate, whether it's a bill that's due or whether it's a deadline that's coming up. A huge part for me is trying to find out for myself, where am I making excuses? Like we hear a lot about, I feel like, well, stop making excuses just in general. And so it's trying to, for me specifically, in my situations, what's going on for me, I'm not sure for others, but it's so much energy trying to decipher almost like what's kind of normal within myself to handle that situation. But there's a comparison, like I should be able to remember the date of the expert, or I should be able to, a huge thing that I notice now comes up is around subscriptions, because they're based on this expectation. Well, not even, I think I don't want to get like too down the rabbit hole, but it's almost this kind of the marketers or the companies, they have so much data, they have so much research, and they work with experts who understand how the mind works in general. And then there's the ADHD mind, let's say. And so it's kind of like, wait, is this all working against me? Like, should I be beating myself up or putting this much effort into managing this for myself? Or is this just like, yeah, this is kind of almost like an unfair advantage for others and not for myself? And I'm the type, like, I hate making excuses for myself. I think, and so that's I feel like where I get into a tug of war with myself, which of course kind of uses up more energy, and I then don't attend to other things. Like, it's almost like I spend so much time on remembering the deadline, remembering I need to either reconsider the subscription or cancel the subscription. And so it's like that energy spent on that is then a distraction from, hey, I have this proposal to get out, or I have, whatever else it might be.
I love that you went in this rabbit hole. It's such a good example. So subscriptions, it was just on my mind the other day, because I was actually trying to cancel a few. And I realized, okay, I have said this in the past. I've said, I believe planners are created most often by people who are neurotypical for people who are not. Meaning planners, I think for the most part, are invented and designed by people who are linear thinkers. And like the profit comes in from those of us who are less linear, who want to find the perfect planner. I personally can attest, there have been years where I have purchased 8 planners because I was trying to find the one that was actually going to help support me the most. All of that money spent also would be considered ADHD tax, right? Because I am spending more on planners, believing that my brain should work a certain way. So that would also fall under what I would call an ADHD tax, something that costs me more because my brain is not created to work that way. I promise I'm going to bring the thread back to subscriptions, right? So like in that same instance, like linear thinkers creating planners for people who are less linear, I believe subscriptions were designed by linear people very often, and the cost, the expense is at people who are less linear for the exact same reasons you just said. So for a few reasons, this is an ADHD tax. Impulsivity can be a trait of ADHD, right? So like, because dopamine is involved, for some people, not all, it shows differently, but there can be that impulse to like, oh, this seems like it will really support me right now in the moment, whatever the app is, the subscription, the tool. It's not always like Netflix either. Like sometimes it's a legit productivity tool that we think might be helpful. I don't know how many apps I've purchased thinking like, this sounds like a great idea. impulsively. Let me try it because I'm thinking it's going to help support me. Sign up, and you have like a 14-day trial, 7-day trial. That's the other thing. The days vary. It's not always the same. So not supportive for a nonlinear thinker, right? And then, like you said, working memory is required to remember to like go back in and either cancel before it automatically charges you, or you end up being charged and you just kind of suck it up and you're like, well, there's another program that I have, because it's so not friendly. It's so neurodivergent, non-friendly to go in and try to then cancel it. There's so many hoops you have to jump through to, first of all, find on the page how to contact the company, and then find on the page how to cancel. Even the cancel button is often very hidden. Like it's the lightest thing on the page. You can hardly see it. Sometimes it looks like you're canceling something and you're really not. They give you like another page and then another page. All of that is such a great idea of ADHD tax. So maybe for a more neurotypical linear thinker, none of that's a problem. Their processing is different. Like the type of things they look for, maybe their ability to see a light blue cancel button at the bottom of the page is stronger than maybe a, neurodivergent person who is distracted by the brighter colors. I don't know. But such a great example of ADHD tax. Like how much, I wonder, like if people that watch this video totaled up the number of subscriptions and apps that they've purchased simply because they forgot to cancel it before the cancel deadline, that's why they do that. But who's more likely to forget to cancel? Someone who doesn't have challenges around working memory, or someone who does have challenges around working memory? Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So
It's so
sorry,
dead
like
on.
you got me on a soapbox. Seriously, it's like
Yeah, well, I'm good at that. Yeah, totally. And oh my gosh, yeah. And then all the little nitty-gritty pieces that go into that whole, what you just described with the subscriptions, which carries over, it's literally going like deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, even when it comes to going on the website or the app. The difficulty in finding the cancel button, right? Or even sometimes the contact information. So believe me, I have a background in graphic design and marketing and art direction and all that, but I was always obsessed with the eyeballs that's staring at the screen, which now it's almost every human on the planet, literally, So, and like how it's designed. Why can't I find the phone number? Why can't I find the email to contact the person? Why can't I find the button that says, and then there's the wording to the energy spent to navigate through the wording and the pages and like the instructions for the next step. It's exhausting. Of course, it's intentional, right? Because the last thing they want you to do is, let's say, to cancel. But the amount of energy spent to even get to that button, which you're like, you know what? I need to save. I really want to save, and I need to save $100 this month. That getting to that button is really important. And then it becomes like the prioritization. If you have many of those subscriptions going on, which one do I spend all that energy on to really, prioritize, as I got to cancel this because it's $100 this month or whatever the amount might be.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that drives, and and that to me, that also ties into the whole, I'm not sure if this is part of the ADHD tax, but I get it, like customer service aspect, being able to speak to somebody, right? Where you could just get on the phone within like 2 minutes, resolve the situation, but no, it results either putting a ticket in on the website, waiting for a response, drags on throughout the whole week. sometimes, let's say more than 1 week to get to that result.
And you have to remember to pick the ball back up in order to keep it moving throughout that
Yes.
course of the week. So the
Yes.
way, right, what I think people don't consider that cost, or maybe they do, right? Because we're talking about large companies who have data, who are profiting. And so who knows? We don't know the intention, right? But the truth is, if you pick up the ball once and you're like, oh, thank God I remembered to pick the ball up. If you're a neurodivergent person, right? The effort that it took to remember and do the thing. This happened to me recently, like just as you described. And then I got into a system where it was like, hold time is extremely long today. Extremely long that day was 2.5 hours.
Yes.
I, as a neurodivergent person, did not hang up because I'm like, if I hang up, the odds that I will remember to pick this back up tomorrow are maybe slim to none. So I'm going to stay on hold and I will leave the sound on and I'll turn the volume down. I got about, I don't know, an hour and 50 minutes into it. It wasn't quite 2 hours, disconnected.
Oh,
So then the decision is, do I go through all the buttons in the systems? Because you have to go through like 4 different menus
yes.
before you can actually hit 0 to talk to someone, right? And
Yes.
so like, what is the cost? That is like not a monetary cost, but I would say it also falls under ADHD tax, the energetic cost to kind of continue to follow through on systems that are less than supportive for a neurodivergent person. Because the remembering of like picking it up, and then if it drops, you need to pick it up again. And then if it drops, it's like you get transferred to a different department and then you have to pick so many different instances, right, of having to use that working memory and actually remember to do the thing that you were trying to do. It's not just like a phone call, one and done.
No.
Much less
Hardly
so these
ever.
days. Hardly ever. And then, like, yeah, don't get me started with the bots who actually profess that they can help you, even though you have like a unique situation and you know that they're not going to be able to. You're actually going to have to talk to someone. ADHD tax. So it's not just monetary, it can come in the form of time and energy as well. I love, yeah, subscriptions are just like super helpful, but then also bane of existence. So it's like, what might be more helpful, I think, is a question that might come up. If someone that's listening to this, maybe they don't have ADHD or they don't understand, like, what might be more supportive? I think it's a good thing to consider. I think moving towards different type of payment options, offering other payment options besides just a subscription or a 1-year pay in full, like maybe something in the middle. Maybe there's like it's monthly and it's not a subscription. You actually have to go in and pay for it if you want it each month, right? Might be more ADHD friendly because then you're actually going to go in and pay for the things that are really interesting and helpful and supportive. And then you're not going to remember to go in and purchase the things that are less helpful and supportive. And you're also not going to automatically pay that amount for something that you don't use. Right?
Completely. Yeah, definitely. There's just want to mention like 2 things. Okay. So one is the ties into, I think it ties into what I just initially when I introduced myself, is that the expectation of self and the guilt or the responsibility for self. Yeah. So it's like all the apps, I think like just companies in general, majority, right? They're operating on this sense of, or they're moving towards, let's say even if you take the customer service aspect, it's removing that. And it's like, oh, we're handing off the responsibility to you, or it's phrased as putting the power in your hands, right? And so, oh, by doing all these things, we're putting the power in your hands, and we're like giving you the options. So it's like, oh, we don't have to take responsibility as a company. It's on you as the customer And if you're operating in this loop and this challenge that we're talking about, you're like, let's say I'm solo, I don't have, in my household, it's just me. You have to now manage all those things. And I think it seems to me where the direction things are going, it's almost like impossible to get a handle on all those aspects without getting additional help. And I think then that kind of goes into like, well, then you have to consider, do I get another app? Do I get do I get a virtual assistant? Do I get on and on and on and on? So, and then the second thing, it's incredible to me how it seeps into every aspect now of our lives. So I'll use an example of just shopping, just retail, going to buy clothes or whatnot. So there's a brand, which I'm sure there's many others that are doing this system. Also, that where you used to go to the store, a pair of jeans, I buy the pair of jeans. Nope. And I've fallen for it. It's a subscription model. So get this. So not only is it a subscription model, like where it's just, okay, you subscribe every month, you get this service. No, it's almost like the Costco concept, but on a monthly basis, where automatically your card is charged $50, but you're in VIP, you're a VIP of this brand now that's online retail. And if you don't, first, number one, if you don't cancel that, you're charged every month, which we're talking about. It's easy to not remember because it's automatic. If you don't, but again, the wording, you have until like the 5th of the month to do the process. If you don't, the card is charged, whether you buy something or not. But then, because you're VIP, which seems like that is the only way to be like have an account with the retailer. So then, but you get discount on the selection of apparel that they have. So you're still paying, but at discounted, or because you were charged for the 1 month, you get it's like a gamification we talked about. Like,
we're not going to say brands on this recording, sure, but I for sure can relate. I can tell you I have way too much athletic apparel, no names intended. The process has been gamified, right? And it's like, yes, personal responsibility, but also realizing that the way certain things are set up are actually like really designed to collect that ADHD tax from people who, it's interesting. It's like we can use gamification in this model for profit, but we haven't quite figured out how to use the gamification model to support employees. And it's like, if we can figure it out on the one hand, we should for sure be able to figure it out on the other hand. It's the same thing. So it's just interesting to me that it can be really clear and sorted when there's a profit model attached and the profit is benefiting someone else versus like an employer-employee situation where we could use the same tools, gamification, in support of the people that are working for the company. And it would be, sure, in the form of supporting their employees and increase profit for the company because productivity would probably go up. Not trying to force these employees into a model that doesn't work for them.
Mm.
There's a thread between the two. I feel like I just went off on a tangent like my brain likes to do. Subscription models, though, yes. So it's very enticing. And so then you want to cancel, right? Because you're like, I was charged, but let me cancel. But then it doesn't make sense to cancel because if I'm playing the game, I have a credit. If I cancel, I'm going to lose my credit. I'm going to lose the discount. So let me wait, use the credit. So then it has to be perfectly timed. Let me not cancel. Let me use my credit. Let me use my VIP points. And then let me cancel before I'm charged again. It's like impossible. It's near impossible to remember those three things in that order so that you're not paying an ADHD tax again the next month. Right?
I'm like, do I have an account if I cancel, or is it just a VIP? Like, What? What?
Yes.
And then the VIP thing, that's the kicker too. And I understand this psychology, right? It's to make you feel so important, right? It's like, well, if you go to a nightclub, oh, you get to sit in the VIP section, then oh, you're special. But that's for everyone. It's not just every user of that account, of that brand. So it's
Yes.
like, what?
Yes.
It drives me crazy.
It's just the psychology behind the way things are set up. But like what we're really trying to highlight here is what the additional cost is for someone who struggles with prioritization, working memory challenges. And look, not because it's a moral struggle. It could be a whole different soapbox talk. There is one, in fact, right? The first one talked about ADHD and neurodiversity. There are pros and cons. There are so many gifts and beautiful rewards that come with having a neurodivergent brain. And I want to say that companies can benefit from if they like learn a little bit more how to best support all brain types. But there are also some challenges. And so what we're talking about today really is one of the challenges, which is like spending more on things, not because you're choosing to spend more or impulsively spending more, but because you get pulled into a system that relies on your working memory in order to unplug from it. So like you're going to spend more, whether you like it or not, unless you remember to disconnect from it and disconnect in the right amount of time. Some stuff is an annual subscription, right? So if you disconnect like too late with that, you're in it for a year and you may not ever use the thing. So like, I just feel like we can do better. I don't have all the solutions. I don't have, right? But I think starting with a discussion around it is just a place that we can begin.
For sure.
I see someone in the chat said, oh, probably thousands. Yes. Right. There is a cost tied to these things. Did you have another thought? It looks like there's one.
Yeah, I just it's not I think there's also like things that come like very quickly on the surface to us when we're discussing this. Let's say like they're very obvious because perhaps they're a part of, let's say, almost a daily interaction with things, which with technology, or if you're a solopreneur and you're near your computer nonstop, pretty much it's daily. But then to me, what's concerning is I think there's ADHD tendencies, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a certain sensitivity, from my estimation, there's within the character of people that are struggling with this, there's a certain sensitivity. And my concern is, I think you and I have talked previously, just like global scale, kind of like humans on the planet, whatever level they're at. And so with this ADHD tax, what's concerning to me is like how it's also in I guess like government systems or state systems or things that you're thinking is like, take care of the people kind of thing, let's say, right? But even in there, like, we talked about, like, I had a situation where I had a traffic ticket. But even that system is operating on this concept of, well, if you remember to pay by this time, then you get to save like 2 points on your license, or you get to save, it could be $1 amount. So it's like, oh, it's not just like money you're spending on leisure or things that you don't have. It's like, like tax stuff or anything. And that's also where it, for me, gets quite concerning, because I'm just like, even on like the basics of the basics, like, the fundamental, things, it's also costly there.
Yes. It's like in business, there is kind of a saying, or it's, a teaching that make it easy for people to pay you, right? So you want to
Yeah.
make it easy. You don't want to put too many hurdles in the way. You
Yes.
want to basically like tell them how and show them the button and like don't make it complicated.
Yeah.
And I think in general, businesses are great at doing that. And yet, like disconnecting is so complicated. And if they know how to make it easy to pay them, it seems like they would also make it easy for you to stop paying them. Like it should just be consensual, right? Consensual would look like easy to pay, easy to decide to stop paying. That's how that would kind of level the playing field for like all humans. Let's not make it easy to pay, but really hard to not pay, right?
Yes.
Same thing with government. I think government actually, in many cases, hasn't even gotten to the make it easy to pay, is what I've found. So their systems, I feel like, are like lag a little bit in general. In general, I'm painting with a broad brush, but and so that first part of make it easy to pay, not totally figured out. It's like this number and not a real person, and websites are clunky and can't create the account that would make it easier has been my experience. So to what you're saying when it comes to government, yes, they make it harder to pay them. Sometimes it is really hard to like get through that system. It's a little murky. I think they've done a better job at, once you do get in the system, making it hard to disconnect. So I think maybe it's flipped a little bit, but I do think what you highlighted, there is this sense of like, but where can we scoop a profit in this whole process? And what it comes down to often is people forgetting to do something and then hitting them with a fee.
Yes.
People forgetting to do something by a certain time and hitting them with another fee. And to your point, anytime there's just like a hitting with a fee because of a like a time, whether it's a time incentive or a time penalty, it can be either. Like a time incentive might be, if you pay by this date, we're going to remove 2 points or it's going to cost you less. Or the time penalty would be like, if you pay after this date, it's compounded and you're going to pay so much more, right? So we can, when we're talking about time, it can be a benefit or it can be a penalty. Specifically, like what you just said, the fact that they're trying to scoop a profit that is tied to people remembering or not remembering to do something just feels less supportive of a group of humans who struggle with working memory. It just seems like they're going to pay a higher cost every time. And if like a portion of your population is paying a higher cost, a tax, so to speak, because of the way their body works or is designed, it seems like it's not a system that is like for all people. It's for some people.
Mm.
Yeah. We also talked about tickets. I know I've had friends on the East Coast where parts of it are, there's parking challenges, right?
Yeah.
So you end up like moving your car like twice a week to the other side of the street for the street sweeper. And if you don't, there's a ticket.
Yep.
I don't know the solution. I'm just highlighting the ADHD tax, how it might be an ADHD tax, right?
Yes.
When you have an ADHD neurodivergent brain, you tend to experience time differently. So you experience time as in like, not yet, not yet, not yet. Nope, not time yet, not time yet. And then you look and it's like, oh my God, now. Like it's,
Yes.
so it's either not time yet or it's exactly time or you've already missed it. There's like a very small window. There's not a margin of error there. Ticketing, I've had people say, oh, you just budget for like $3,000 worth of tickets a year because it's like impossible to
It's
escape it,
easier.
which might be true. But I would offer also for someone who struggles with working memory challenges, that 3,000 might actually be closer to 6 or 12. Like it's crazy how much someone can want to remember to move their car and yet not have access to the part of their memory that helps them remember to move their car right when it needs to be moved. And so then what happens is the first ticket and then it scaffolds or it snowballs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and with all those with those scenarios, it's like the late fees, like if you don't remember by this date, it just, to me, it just appears as like this idea of, because I've experienced it and dealt with it, or had to deal with it, this like kick them while you're down kind of thing. It's like, I'm saying to myself, wait a second, like, let's say even your mortgage or whatever, like, wait a second, like something, as major, more major as that, let's say, is like, how is this helping the person deep down emotionally, do better, or like not be in, let's say, a hole or a difficult situation, if it's almost like you're piling on by these, like, sometimes exorbitant amount of fees, piling on more and more and more. Wait, the person is in debt, let's say, and they owe you already a large amount of money, but you're not going to pile on even more and more and more and more. It's like, that's not going to help you. I don't see that helping you get the money back.
Yes. I mean, the banking system is another area where, like, right, they are known for charging fees. And just like you said, it's like the people who are paying the fees are typically the people who don't have access to the funds to pay the fees. That's why they're there. And yet banks will talk about like what their profit is or how much they profited for the year.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, when you look at how or why or where those fees are coming from, often I think it's coming from a situation where it's probably all connected. Like some subscriptions went through that were like the person didn't remember, right? So we could potentially be talking about compound situations, not only in the like disconnecting from the subscriptions, but then let's like not even add on the part where then it goes to the bank and a person who is like running like that fine of a line, it's just a snowball effect. And then it's almost like, oh, we've got them, so let's just kind of make as much as we can, rather than, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to just talk about problems. I'm like, what are some solutions? I
Sure,
mean, it would be interesting just to be like, oh, the subscription didn't process. Let's just like kick them out of the app. Like they no longer have access to the app, right? It might be inconvenient for the person that has to go back in and restart it because they really did want to keep it. But for the people who have working memory challenges, I mean, that might be the kindest version of doing something, or like allowing people to opt in at the start, which method works best, they prefer, right? Because I can guarantee a lot of those apps where people are being charged the subscriptions, many of them, it is a case of forgetting and not using them. And it's actually hard sometimes to tell, like in a bank statement, what it really is for if it's a subscription. Like it doesn't tell you the name of the app. You have to do quite a bit of digging just to figure out what it was for. Ask me how I know. I've gone through statements and been like, wait, what is this? What is this charged for? It's like not clear.
you're like,
Right?
is
Do
it
I
a
want to
scam,
keep
or
this app? Do I want to keep the subscription or do I not? Like,
you're
yeah,
trying to guess also if it's a scam? Like, wait, is it a fraud?
right. Did someone, is it a fraud alert? And how does the bank know? Right? How do they give me fraud alerts sometimes when I'm traveling? And yet,
Yeah. Oh,
so
but it
all
conveniently
of it.
went through for the app.
Yes, all of it.
Well, I have
I'm
one
curious.
solution. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm curious for people that have joined live, I'm curious if there are any thoughts around ADHD tax, and if this is making any kind of sense, or if you are like, I can't relate to this at all. If you would like to pop in the chat, just from a curiosity standpoint, and we'll give a minute to do that because I know there's a little bit of a lag between our talking and the actual YouTube. But while people are doing that, well, I want to hear what you had to say. You looked like you were getting ready to say something.
No, I was just, I think it's like also a little bit jokingly or not jokingly, but, like once, yes, I don't like to spend too much talking about the problem, but like what, solutions. And, like, well, one solution is like, I've had to protect myself, I've had to like switch credit cards where I know it's a low credit account, credit amount limit, knowing that it's going to reject that automated charge. I mean, like, it's like I'm playing tricks, and I'm like, that's the last thing I like doing is playing mind games, and I had to because I know what's going to happen. So it's like,
Yeah.
that's one
You're
way.
like, let me reverse engineer this
Yeah,
somehow.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, hey, Marianne. Yep. Relate to all of it. Okay. Totally relate. Yeah, it's not something that's talked about a ton. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is we were talking about at the beginning holidays and ADHD tax, specifically around that. One way that I think it can show up is, I know in the membership we talk a little bit about overcompensating for what we see as imagined deficiencies. And so like wanting to, like, as a neurodivergent person, after like a lifetime of conditioning meaning seeing yourself as a little bit different than the way other people experience things. Like hearing messages that basically say, oh, that way that you think is totally normal to do that, not so normal, right? Or like noticing that the way you do things is a little bit different than other people. I think it can kind of imprint this feeling of like, oh, there must be something going on where I'm deficient. So I want to try to overcompensate. So like it's common for people with ADHD to like really focus on the over deliver because they're trying to like make up for the areas that they feel like they're maybe less than or not as smoothly functioning. It's a very common dynamic. And I think when I had a tie to holiday shopping. What was it? It'll come back. Oh, I mean, just like remembering at the last minute that you need to actually purchase gifts and like ship them before a deadline so that they get somewhere by the holiday, right? That is a whole level of planning that for many people, neurotypical is not a thing. For neurodivergent person, it's like, oh, wait, I think I actually need to have something already purchased now so that I can send it so that it gets there in time, right? There can be an ADHD tax tied to that because all of a sudden you're just like, I need to find something. It needs to be like, I want it to be something good. I need to do it quickly. I'm in the last week, so I'm going to pay more for shipping to make sure it gets there on time. So like, and like not pausing to think, oh, I'm not going to do all of that. That's just too crazy. I'm just going to let it get there a little bit late, which actually I've had some neurotypical friends tell me they've done. It's like, no, I messed this up. So I need to make sure I get it there on time, no matter what the cost, right? And so something that maybe would have cost X amount ends up costing X amount times 10 because you really are committed to trying to like over deliver and make sure that you're forgetting or not being cognizant of the date and the timeline and all of that is going to like mess things up. Just wanted to mention that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think that's like where I think it appears like in softer ways. Not necessarily sometimes so much in like a transaction you can read on your statement or email, but like in softer ways. I relate to that a lot, especially around the holidays, even if it's traveling to see family or a friend or, vacation and everything that's tied into all that planning, that some things cost more, or like that whole thing, like you talk about often, right? Like you wait for that either exact date or time or something that becomes something for you to butt up against to make a decision or remember. So where I've had to plan getting the hotel last minute, or lack of planning, getting the hotel last minute, which now costs a lot more because I can take the time to compare prices and get the best price ahead of time. and then even delaying. And I mean, and it's always fluctuating, there's, I feel like where I felt a lot better about that soft aspects when it comes to dealing with, people well, or acquaintances, or, just family and friends, and, softer ways where, what, I've had to give myself the grace to say, it's okay. I will visit in like January is coming up, right? It's like, I will visit in January or exchange the gifts or purchase the gift after the norm, the hype of the holiday. And it's worked quite well when I've been able to give myself that grace to do it that way, rather than force myself into the hoopla of, like, let's say, especially December, of all those, especially this month, there's so many dates, so many, when to ship the stuff, when the sale is, when the yada, yada, yada. Man, and that for me, I found like that was always when I can give myself that grace and that space and the ability and the willingness to consider doing it differently, that works for me. It's been so much better, so much better.
Yeah. No, I relate to that. Giving self grace. Specifically, when you were talking about it, I was remembering there was a point in time when keeping track of all birthdays was like hard, and I want to, and I have them on my calendar. And then sometimes something happens with the calendar where it doesn't show up, and I have a sense that it's coming, but I don't have the exact date right. And I remember thinking, like, I think it was June, and I had a friend whose birthday is in December. And I was always like, oh, I forgot to get the thing. And I can never find what I want to send when it's coming up to the deadline. So it was June, and I found the perfect thing, and I saw it, and I thought instantly of her. And so I got it, and I sent it to her, and I said, happy birthday. And it was in June, and her birthday was in December. And I was like, look, I'm giving us like both some grace, especially me. I don't always remember things when I mean to. Like, I'm not always, and it's not because I don't care. It's just because my brain is not always remembering right when it needs to, right? And so here's when I see something, like, I'm just going to get it, and I'm going to send it and say happy birthday. And then, like, the times when I actually remember on your birthday to send a card or what have you, then I'm going to do that too. But just know, like, it's not a reflection of how I think about you. It's more a reflection of like my brain's challenges. And I gave myself grace. And as soon as I actually did that, it became much easier to remember her actual birthday. It was so fascinating for me to notice when I kind of relieved the pressure of, I care about this person all the time, not just on their birthday.
Yes.
And I'm going to send it something when I feel like sending it, totally random. Christmas in July works great for me. And I'm just going to be like, happy birthday. And like, hopefully we talk on your birthday too. Right. It doesn't have to mean all the things. And I get some people are like, that's not appropriate. That's not cool. You should remember your friends' birthdays. The same goes for me. Like, if you are a friend of mine and you forget to message me or send me something on my birthday, truly, if we have a friendship, it's not the thing that's crossing my mind. I know, right? Like, I'm not a person that's going to hold that against someone.
Yes.
And so I just think communicating the why behind that. So when you said grace, that's what it brought up for me. I was like, yeah, that felt so like freeing to just be allowed to be me and not make it mean I was, an awful person or inconsiderate or whatever it was. None of that's true about me, but I really made it mean it about me. I did it. She didn't either. I was the one beating myself up until I just decided to like give a little grace.
And sometimes the person will make it, because some people are like really like they're enraged if you don't remember their birthday, because it means like you don't care about a friendship. I really resonate with you. I think I sit with that a lot, some too much. I think is the meaning, like we're all making things mean stuff, but some people, especially with birthdays, like it's one thing. It's like the one day of the year, I mean, once a year you couldn't remember. I'm like, wait, do you value that we speak 4 times a year, or do you value that we don't speak at all? And then the one day, but I remember to call you on your birthday. Like, I'm like, wait, what? Like, to me, the continuum of the relationship and the interaction is way more important. Yeah, so
It's just preferences, but and I get it. For some person, it's like one day, but honestly, depending on the number of people that you have in your life that are close to you, there's a lot of executive function remembering that can happen, right? So from an
yeah.
executive function point of view, I'm just like, it's helpful to offer grace and to like, for me to choose that I am always doing the best that I can in any given moment. And I choose to believe that other people are too. And sometimes it shakes out the way we want it to or expect it to. And sometimes it looks different, but like there's room for all of it. Marianne, I see your comment. You said last minute feels better to you when you do it early. It's like a ticking time bomb or build up until go time anticipation. Yeah. And I mean, everyone's different. So for you, it sounds like that sense of urgency. You're like, okay, now let's do it. Yes. That might work too. I think there's a balance between like urgency for the things that you really want to make sure you get done, and then like openness for the things that are less structured, required. Anything else that you want to share before we wrap up, Dejan? This has been a fun conversation.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's it is just the communication. I think, the talking and and hearing the challenges and sharing to help people understand, in a way that is just, it's not in a way of trying to defend or make excuses, but I think it's just kind of the consideration, to consider like, wait, well, hold on a second, right? If we're talking about, we care about humans, it's like, what, whatever capacity, organization or whatnot, is like, well, if you're shoving that message down people's throat, or like, make sure you remind people all the time, well, we care. It's like, well, let's take a look, let's just be a little open to consider that maybe some things need to change.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think to add to that, assumptions, a lot of assumptions happen, and we think we know why people are doing things or not doing things. And when you said the word, what was the word you just said? And I was like, oh, that is a common belief. Oh, excuses. I think there can be assumptions that when people are trying to just describe their experience with how things work for them, that it can sound like excuses. It's a label that's been given, and it's a perspective that is inaccurate. So I think that is what's most important to me out of all of these discussions, is that people consider maybe a different perspective, and that not every human in the world operates exactly as they do. And can we make room for differences? And are we able to hear different perspectives without going straight to assumptions? Yeah. So I appreciate that you agreed to come on and talk about this, because I think it can break up some assumptions and like open people's minds to just other ways of being.
Yes. And yeah, and yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. And it's also a practice for me, and hopefully others can also feel that they can just crack open and to just win whichever way, just to speak to help them manage these aspects. I know it's quite difficult for me, to right, the acceptance of even someone, the whole concept of ADHD. I'm sure that you can speak to that, right? That okay, this is a challenge, and then accepting that it is a challenge, and then let's work with it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yes, we're all pieces of the puzzle, Marianne. Absolutely. So on that note, if you would like to be a part of more discussions like this, I am going to do a shameless plug. It's going to be short and sweet. Just check out Brain Brilliance, the membership program. We talk about all things like this. Really, it's my goal to help normalize all of us just being human and really embracing who we are. And there's a lot of really wonderful people in there. So you will find the link in the description box. Thank you for being here if you were here live, and hope to see you on the inside. No, I'll see you on